Welcome, everybody, to Establishing Clear Partnerships Responsibilities Part 2. Thank you for your patience. We're dealing with some technical difficulties. I'll throw it over to Beth. She's going to introduce herself.
Fantastic, lovely, wonderful. I'm Beth Housewert, and I am the owner of Inspired Impact, where I do museum consulting for emerging museums and new museum professionals.
And I am Erin Richardson, and I own Frank and Glory, which is a museum services firm that primarily helps museums with their core collections, aka permanent collections. I'm based in Cooperstown, New York. I've been doing this work independently for about 8 years, and I've worked in the museum field since the mid-1990s.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cashmere Morley. I'm based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I run Pendulee, which is an exhibit design firm. We also deal with some public art solutions for museums and institutions all across the U.S. I lead an independent museum professional group made up of a professional network of consultants and freelancers who work in all areas of museums and with all different kinds of museums. Our network provides a central hub of resources, knowledge, and connections. We actively work to support independent museum professionals, strengthen the relationship between independent museum professionals and museums, and advance the museum field. If you're interested in getting involved, we'll provide more information at the end of this session. But as we're getting started, please feel free to introduce yourself into the chat. And we hope that you meet some great people and learn some great stuff.
Okay, so we will break out into smaller groups later, but this is sort of your advance notice as to what we are going to prompt. We'll re-prompt you about breakout groups later. But while we are talking, think about a time when you had successes or failures with expectations. Somewhere in the scale of along the line of murky expectations or crystal clear expectations for everyone. So during the presentation, think about that one, past event that you've called to mind. And as we're providing options and suggestions, think about one that you may have already used as part of your recalled example, something that might have been helpful in hindsight, or something that you'll try next time just because it sounds like a great idea. And we'll let you know what these are again.
Great. As you prep, we're going to start talking a little bit about how to do these types of communications, different techniques, things like that. So we're going to start off with when you want to have an evaluation and have that clear communication with your client, you have to choose between formal or informal evaluations. When I make a contract with my folks, usually I will put a midpoint evaluation, final, but before I even make that choice, I have to decide, is this a space where I'm going to do a form that I send out to folks? Is this going to be a meeting? Is it going to be an open conversation? Those types of things. So choosing formal versus informal. And remembering this type of evaluation is about the process and not necessarily about the product. You're going to be having kind of those checkpoints and scope evaluations and things like that throughout the time that you're working with a client. But this specific evaluation is based on how is the work happening and is it happening efficiently? One of the things we always have to remember is that most of our clients have not worked with a consultant before. So it may not be that they're deliberately not doing what we expect them to do. It may be that they just don't know, or they don't understand the language or the lingo that we use. So you kind of have to start thinking about that and how to go back to that. Making sure too, when you do those, you have agendas and different things like that. So I'm going to give you an example on the next slide of one of the evaluations I use because I do coaching with emerging museum professionals, people new to their job, museums that are going through change and they would like to do a little bit of professional development. So I do this in a form that I send out to people ahead of time so that they can contemplate the questions, fill it in if they like to, and then we meet on a Zoom call to talk about the answers to the question. And I really focus them in on, is this way that we're doing this effective? Is it in the right order? Is it personalized? And kind of, are you getting what you expected out of it? And this really starts me thinking about, are we on the right track? Do we need to course correct? Things like that. Later in the talk, Erin's going to talk a little bit about course correction and things like that. The next thing is about timing of these. I alluded to that. On the next slide, you'll see that you have to decide when you are looking at your contract of work or your phasing of your work, different things like that. When is the most important time to have these check-ins? When I do a 12-week contract for coaching, at the 6-week mark, I do one check-in, and then I do a final check-in at the end as well. And that really has benefited me just in knowing that when we get halfway through, we're past the get to know you phase, and we're starting to get down deeper into content delivery. There's been a lot of practice on how we're presenting, different things like that, and then we can move forward. So making sure too that this is scheduled in the kickoff time. When you have that initial kickoff meeting, which we talked about in the last presentation that we did, make sure these midpoints are scheduled in there. They have clear expectations that they're coming, that they should be thinking about the process, maybe taking some notes along the way. And then lastly, this is to be a 360 evaluation. Not only are they evaluating your performance and your process, but you too are evaluating and looking at their performance and progress. So making sure that it is that open two-way conversation. Now, Erin's going to talk to us a little bit about what happens with the results of these evaluations.
Thanks, Beth. So often when you do these evaluations, everything's going great. Yay, let's keep doing it. Frequently, there is some room for improvement. So you might find in the evaluation that, at the beginning, which is something we talked about in the last session, like let's say everyone agrees to, communicate informally via Slack. And it turns out that everyone is still just sending you, the consultant, 600 emails a day without subject headings, and it's chaos in the email. So maybe you need to say, look, we said we were going to do this. Is this not working? What's going on here? What can we do? Maybe you need to clarify some deliverables and timelines. Maybe there's an expectation from the client that, something is supposed to be happening next week. And in fact, the contract says, no, that's a deliverable for the end of the project. So there may just be an opportunity to go back to the contract, their proposal, the scope of work, and just kind of reinforce what's in there. And there's an opportunity for me as the consultant to check if I am being appropriately responsive. Maybe I'm super annoying, and I have asked people to return documents too many times. Often it's, you can prevent me pestering you by just returning the document, but I can't say that all the time. So these are some minor adjustments. So we talked in the last session about norms and agreements. Maybe you need to adjust norms and agreements for the project. Maybe you need to agree, okay, fine. I, the consultant, would really prefer that people don't send me everything via email, but maybe that's just how it's going. So there's just some, check in on expectations. Let's say that there's more going on in the midpoint, or maybe this is even outside the midpoint, where stuff around your project has changed. and you need to change the scope of work to respond to whatever is happening. So last time we talked about contracts or letters of agreement or scopes of work. There's a lot of different things that you can use to define the project and write it down, and everyone signs off on that. You may need to change what is happening in the contract. Maybe you need to, so when to use a change order, which is the vehicle that I use to change something about the contract. Maybe you need to add or remove a deliverable. Maybe you need to change the scope of the deliverables, or you need to change the length of the contract. Maybe it's going to end sooner, maybe it's going to go on for more time. So here's a couple of scenarios that I have experienced. So I'm acting in a project manager role for a 2-year NEH grant. Almost every staff position at the client organization that is a part of this grant has turned over during the grant period, which is not something that we anticipated. And guess what? Now me, external project manager, is the person who has the most longitudinal knowledge about this project. So I am spending a lot of time onboarding staff to the project because there's no one at the organization to do it. So that's a change order. And it's not necessary, the change order is not, I am going to, now we're adding onboarding new staff. It's all right, we're going to compensate me for all this time I've spent, we're going to get rid of a different component of this project, like another instance of another component of this project. You might need to add an instance of a deliverable if you're doing visitor evaluation, right? And you've got some early results that say, wow, we really need to dig into this. You know, the people who live in this zip code seem to have like really different responses to our survey than other people. And we want to do a focus group with these people to understand more about what's happening. Maybe you want to add that as an additional focus group. You may also need to pause the work and come back to it later. This is something that I've also done. So if there are too many things happening, there's a delay in funding, there is somebody, your key project partner at the client organization has to go out on medical leave, and it's just, there's no one to take this over in an interim role. Maybe you just need to put a pin in this project and come back 3 months later. So that's another thing that you can work out with a change order. So this is a document that we will make available to you. It's a template change order. So some of this comes from construction. Like this is that's what my husband is in the historic preservation field. So the way this works is you have your client organization at the top. You may want to give the change order a number if you think that there's more than one. This allows you to cite like you can cite the change order in an invoice if you need to do that. What the date of the original contract is, what the value of the original contract is, and then I like to also put the value of the contract after the change so that everyone understands you were going to pay me X dollars. Now you are going to pay me X dollars plus Y dollars. I don't know what goes on with museum people and budgets, but sometimes money is not the strong suit, and you really need to say, no, when we added something to the project and I told you it was going to cost extra, I meant it was going to cost extra. See, extra. Like just, spell it right out. And then you can talk about the change, like the name of the deliverable, either if you're changing an existing deliverable, if you're adding a new one, you can explain that. I really like to explain the context, like why are you making this change? This is part of like the project documentation so that when somebody goes to pay the bill for the extra, they know why. And then explain what the change is. And you can have more, and then what is the value of the change? Like if you're going to remove something, it's going to be a negative value. They're going to save money. If you're adding something, they're going to pay more. You can put multiple changes in one change order and then make sure that you get signatures and dates at the bottom. I didn't put that in the slide because there wasn't enough room and for you to also read the words. The other thing that I have borrowed from my husband's work is the idea of substantially complete and punch lists. This might apply much more to people who do exhibition development and construction than to some other people in this webinar. Basically, for me, this means I get paid at a reasonable phase of completeness. This is when most of the work is done, and there might be little bits that are hanging out that are incomplete that are due to external factors, like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of new tariffs, and now there's a whole situation about like delayed imports for parts that somebody needs to make a component for this exhibit, but I still need to get paid. So you can like submit an invoice for 95% of the remainder of the project, and you could just hold that. There's like a little retainage, like when this is done, you can pay me the remainder. A punch list is this project is done except for these specific little bits that are related to something beyond my control or often beyond the control of the organization, like the shipping or, you know, some person. The executive director has decided that they want the former board member with a background in education to review this curriculum because who knows why, but it's holding up the whole project. So this project is done except for former board members' review comments, right? So that's your punch list. Like, here's all the things that are undone, and this project will be done when everything on this punch list is complete, and then I get the rest of the money. Beth and I both have examples about stepping away. Beth is going first.
We do. We do. One of the things that I have experience with in working with kind of a consultant collective is the importance of phasing and knowing that sometimes when there's a large group of people working on a project together, it might be best, or even if you get that weird feeling with a client, it might be best to start with that clear expectation that we're going to do this in phases. This is going to be individual contracts for each phase, or there's going to be a very mindful evaluation place in between each phase where either of you has the option to walk away. I had an experience here where we were working with a kind of a large group, and we'd been brought in as a collaborative entity for a company that was kind of looking to dive into a new field that they hadn't done as much with. So they brought us in to be kind of the knowledge base in the museum world and things like that. And soon off, we started to realize that we were getting a bit of an ick factor in that we felt like we were being mined for information. Then we would never be hired on again because they would embody that information as their own. So we were kind of like, is it worth it to continue on? Or is it worth it to say, thank you so much for the opportunity. We wish you well. And we were so incredibly thankful that we had contracted in that phasing way that it automatically gave us the opportunity to say, we're not going to issue the next contract because we're done with this one. You know, you can put it in so many ways, however you want to. But I think that it's nice to have that. And it also brings about something I talk about a lot of times is there's comfort in predictability in that you know that you have this option at the end of the phase. So you're not consuming yourself with, oh my gosh, I'm going to be burdened forever. How do I cut this contract? How do I go to them to tell you I'm super disappointed? Things like that. But you can, you know, tie into what you're feeling as a contractor and say, I'm so glad that I built that phase in, and I'm not going to continue on with that phase, the next phase. And I have that kind of get out of jail free side of things ready for me. So Erin's going to talk a little bit about some of the experiences she's had too that were a little bit more formalized in how she had to get out of it.
So you know, this is probably more like reveals too much about me psychologically, but I like to work, I like to structure projects so that we can break up if we want to. Like this is not a marriage, right? We can be like, you know what, I don't want to date you anymore. All done. Um, so I often have I always do deliverables based projects, and sometimes those deliverables are contingent, so you have to do A before B and B before C, etc. Um, I also always include how to cancel this contract in the contract, right? So usually it reads something like, you know, either party may cancel this within by what does it say? With notification in writing. Once received, it will, you know, the project may continue for 30 days and any undone work will be delivered to the client. We'll work out like how much everyone owes everyone, and we're all done. I recently read in a municipality's contract that basically said, if this municipality is more than 60 days late with any payment, the contract is considered canceled. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Which means you could find yourself praying for late payments, or you know, you might lose out on some income, but you gain the emotional and mental time of dealing with a client. I also like to put options in the contract. So these look like, okay, if at the end of, you know, phase B, the following situations are in place, the two parties might elect to add this component to the work or this other component to the work. And those options usually have values attached to them. And that you can add those parts with a change order. Like this change order basically says, we all agree that we're going to move forward with, you know, option 4, valued at this amount. So those just all give you opportunities to say, yes, I want to continue working with you. This has been great. Or, wow, this is not the best for me and looks like we're not going to move on with the next phase.
Awesome. So we've given you some interesting techniques, some of which you may have used before, some that might be new to you, and we're going to get ready to go into some breakouts. We have a good amount of time left in the call, so we're going to do about 5 people together for a 10-minute breakout so that you can start thinking about those questions we posed earlier with that kind of great spectrum that's there. Recalling previous expectations for success or failure. Was this really a murky situation? Was this crystal clear? Did I provide comfort and predictability for my people? Was my timing correct? Was my form of evaluation correct? Oh my gosh, my client didn't understand that a 6-month retainer was a time-based contract. And when it expired in 6 months, we were done. Oh my goodness. That's my example. And then start to really think about some solutions, knowing that we have 10 minutes to chat, and that could very easily turn into kind of this commiseration and, oh my gosh, I can't believe. But how can you take what you learned today and turn it into some really cool, productive ways to move forward in the future so there is that crystal clear expectation? All right, so we're getting ready, about 5 people-ish per breakout. You have 10 minutes, and we'll give you a little bit of a warning. And then, of course, we're kind of going to ask you to report out when you get done with your breakout. Choose somebody to talk, or you can talk about other friends' ideas. All righty, Cashmere, are you ready?
Ready. I'll see
All
you.
right, you'll get a little pop-up for your breakout. So good. I think most everybody is back. Love this. All right, we're going to take just a few minutes because we can to go over what happened in the breakout. I know that in our little group, we had some aha moments and commonalities that came up between multiple IMPs having the same issue and then a resolution from another person. So we're going to give an example of that. Bonnie, do you want to give your example? You know what I'm talking about. Make sure you're off mute so that we can hear you. All right, Bonnie, you're still on mute. Come off mute so you can give us your example.
Sorry,
There
it
we
was asked me to, which example did you want?
Your example about giving a proposal and not getting the job.
Yeah, so I'm a grant writer and I had, it was a community organization within the township municipality actually. And they had wanted to hire me as a grant writer. And I was told, well, they're kind of vacillating on the contract, and if you could come up with something, it would be really good. It would kind of seal the deal. And so I found a grant that was actually absolutely perfect for them. And the next email I got was, gee, thanks, we're going to do that ourselves.
Oh, dagger to the heart. And then I followed up with, oh my gosh, I had a very similar thing happen early in my career. I did this proposal and it was very detailed. And shortly after that, I saw a job posting from that organization to complete the things that I had just proposed to them to do as a consultant. And I was like, well, no wonder they didn't hire me, because they literally now are hiring somebody else to be on their staff to do that project. So we realized that we had commonalities here, and then Erin came in with her knowledge base of goodness with a solution.
Right. So having been burned previously by the same exact scenario, I now include an intellectual property statement at the bottom of all of my proposals that say this is for use by the client in consideration of this work only, and any other sharing or distribution is not allowed. Because I had somebody basically take my proposal, give it to another consultant and say, we'll hire you if you can do it for less.
Wow. Right? Oh, Claire, you have your hand raised. Give it to us.
Yeah, my question is, have you ever been able to take someone to court on something like that? Do you think it
No, I
actually
haven't
stops
had,
people?
I do, I haven't had to, and it makes me feel better. Um, I haven't, I haven't had to do it, but I
Because
have
I
no
would
idea.
yeah, I
So,
mean, that's what the whole thing about these contracts are, right? People can just like kind of ignore them.
yeah, but it's better than not having it at all.
No,
Because
I
all I have to
agree.
do is
I mean, I don't
zero.
mean to be, I've just to be negative. I guess I have so much burnness.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe it is also an opportunity that you take that idea to your lawyer and you say, how can I write this into my contract so it is legally binding and I can take somebody to court if they do it? What do I need to be proof that someone has done it? So if you have that one off with your lawyer, then you know that it's sound and you can move forward with it. And that gives you comfort in knowing that you've safeguarded yourself from being burned yet again.
And in my case, I didn't even have the contract yet. So, knowing that going forward, I would never do such a thing again without a contract.
Yeah. And similarly, mine was on a proposal. And
Yeah.
ever since that instance, my proposals are much more vague. They do not go into detail. They are more about like, this is the concept of what we're going to do, but there is no step-by-step of anything anymore. Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
I mean, I think it's all the beginning for me like that
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, we live and learn. And oftentimes I use the quote, we do the best we can do until we learn better, and then we do better because we're doing our best. But we're coming to things like this to learn better, which is so good. So good. Laura, I saw that you came off of mute before.
That's okay. I have a colleague who organized traveling exhibitions. He gave a client a way too detailed proposal about organizing their traveling exhibition. At which point they said, "Oh, well, we can just follow your blueprint." And after the first stop, they had the audacity to call him and say, "You didn't say we should put a inventory sheet on each of the crates about what got packed into each crate, and we struck the exhibit and we don't know how to repack it." And he said, "Yeah, too bad. Karma sometimes catches up with people." I also had the experience of discovering that a fellow consultant pretty much stole my proposal. When I saw a proposal that she had done, and it used a lot of my language. So yeah, you've got to be really careful. And obviously people can buy Acrobat so that they can extract text from a PDF, but the more you can make it hard to pull the language that you've worked so hard to write out of what you've shared, the better.
So incredibly true. Again, Erin with her wisdom. The information in this proposal is proprietary and confidential. Use by any party other than insert organization without prior approval by consultant is strictly prohibited. Ah, I like that. If anything, it's like the opportunity, a tiny scare tactic, but also the opportunity to say, I see you. And this is not my first rodeo. I
Well,
like that.
And I feel like as knowledge organizations that need to be concerned with copyright as part of our business, and also having many conversations about AI, but the fact that it's words you didn't write should automatically give you pause before distributing them. I don't
Yes.
know. Maybe it doesn't. It does for me.
Agreed. All right. So we shared one of our good examples and it led to some great conversation. Did anybody else have any really awesome takeaways, ahas, great thought-provoking moments in their breakout? Just come off mute or raise your hand. Or a phenomenal commiseration. Bart, yes.
Oh, so many. But I did. Amanda snuck in our group just at the last minute, right? The familiar phrase that good contracts make good friends, and and I think as intimidating as it is, spending the time to have that language, you know, get a lawyer who sort of understands the creative field. It is expensive, to hire them, but a couple $1,000 spent there to fine tune a contract is so well worth the peace of mind. We do have a contract going off the rails right now, and we just know what the process is. It's unpleasant, but we know how it's going to play out because it's spelled out in a contract that we can go back to. I think the bigger question is, particularly with this language that we've shared, which I think is really, really great, is how much are you willing to spend to enforce it? At the end of the day, will it hold up in court? Maybe. Can you afford to go to court and gamble on whether or not it will? That's another question. So having some understanding of, hey, lawyer, like if we try to pursue this, I'm trying to collect this $5,000. Do I need to pay you 10 to get it? Well, then it's another question. But if it's, I need to pay you 5 to try and collect 30, well, then it might be worth it. So also knowing what that means, like what does it take to enforce it, would be another good question to ask if you find yourself in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And also knowing too that the pre-work ahead of time to write a good contract brings about so much comfort in the end because So very good point there. All right. Amy.
Hi, it's Amy. I really liked our conversation in our group about, not so much a deliberate scope creep, but just a lack of awareness of the work itself. In our examples, we had designers and fundraisers and appraisers, and just, coming in and thinking we had a shared assumption about what the role means, but that the client had an assumption that there would be this like really comprehensive approach to the project that we didn't. So, Christine, I really loved what you said about adding what I won't do in a contract. So if there are some things that you're running into over and over, like as a fundraiser, I can't guarantee you will make a certain amount of money from my consultancy with you. So I need to put something in there that's like, I can't guarantee specific revenue results.
That's such a good thing. And I know that even with grant writing and different things like that, it is for the process of grant writing. Not that I will get paid when you get this grant, because no, you're shooting yourself in the foot if that's the case. What if the grant is a finite amount of money and they just don't make the cut? You don't get paid? No. No, that's not right. Well, for the most part, we're going to give Cashmere a little bit of time to tell you about what's coming up next. But in thinking about this session today, it really was just empowering everybody to take the time to think about how agreements are made. This kind of two-part series of really taking the time in the beginning to have those clear expectations and clear language for folks, but also the continuation and forcing your clients to have accountability in the second session. So we really hope that everybody just takes what they've heard over the course of the last two sessions to hone in agreements and consistently be thinking about process and holding other people to the process clearly in an effort to have that comfort and to have that understanding and make it that really good what was the quote? I can't remember. Good contracts make good friends kind of thing. So that there isn't the he said, she said, oh my gosh, we didn't know, you totally burned us. And then your name has a bad reputation because of one client not understanding what they were signing up for. So take the time to think about it. If you have more questions, things like that, you can always reach out to us. But Cashmere is going to give us a little preview of what's coming up next and how you can also be involved with IMP.
Beth, thank you everyone for showing up today. Such a good session. Keep in touch with us online. You can follow this QR code or visit us on our website. You can also find us online on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you want to get involved, volunteer with us, send us some program ideas, contribute to the listserv, become a member. If you have some time, fill out this brief survey letting us know how we did today. And check out our upcoming events. We have IMP's Connect Self-Care for Museum Consultants coming up on April 2nd and Advocating for Queer People in Museums May 13th. So look out for those and whatever we're doing at AAM as well. And just thank you all again for showing up today.